figure that's 25 years ago. They invested. Some of them were in their 60s and 70s at that time.
Right.
So many of them have died.
Did these investors get paid back, whatever happened with Christie's and the other people? Because it is a major effort for somebody to have done what he did. Bringing all the people together, locating the ship, developing technology to go find it, bringing it up. Awesome. No question about it. And I'm sure there's a whole other entrepreneur element to this that's riveting. The other side of it is that there seems to be a lot of bitterness and bad blood on the business financial side at the end of this, having nothing to do with the parasites that tried to claim his discovery.
Right.
What happened? What can you speak to comfortably about why it ended up bitter for many of the investors and people that got involved with him on the business side? I don't want to dwell on it, but I'd like to know for the public.
Sure. No, that's a legitimate question, Cam. And I'll tell you everything I know about it, which is not a lot. I've had a lot of people tell me on the inside of this, people from Christie's and other people, that this is at least as an exciting book as the one you've already written. All of the personalities and the conflicts and behind the scenes and all this stuff in the lawsuits. He's been sued over 200 times by all kinds of people just coming out of the woodwork claiming various things. Most of that's just frivolous stuff. But getting back to the investors, I know three things for sure. I know that they brought up a lot of gold. I've held it in my hands. I've seen pictures of the rest of it. I've talked to the people at the coin dealers and numismatists who were selling the gold on the market. A lot of people have bought it. So I know one thing, that they brought up a lot of gold. How much it's worth, 100 million, 150, 200 million. I really don't know the total value of that gold, but they sold it, and I know that they got, for the biggest brick that was over 80 pounds of gold bar, they received about $8 million just for that one. And they had a lot of bars, and they had thousands of coins that were, in a grade up in the mid-60s, and 70 is perfect. These were really valuable coins. So we know they recovered a lot of treasure. I also know that the investors never saw a dime of that. Number three, I know that Tommy would never abscond with money. He would never take some of that or put it into some Swiss account somewhere. So those three things, Tommy would never do anything with that gold that was less than above board. There was a lot of gold found. The investors have received nothing. I can't explain.
It's an anomaly that, on one hand you can say it's nobody's business except the people that were involved. And there's a lot of this that's sealed in the courts. But just between us and the public, it doesn't make sense how that magnitude of discovery could come up and the investors not get their investments back. That does not sit well with me. I'm not here to judge him or what happened. There's a lot to learn from what he produced and created on so many aspects of this. But there was enough in gold discovered to have satisfied the investors. And that's going to be between him and God, whatever happened. And for whatever reason, you seem to know him well enough to know that he would never abscond with anything. But there is an anomaly with why the original investors weren't satisfied.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about numbers there. I know that when Tommy, about the time Ship of Gold came out in '98, somewhere along in there, that would have been even later than that, actually. Sometime in the early 2000s, I guess, Tommy sold the right. And when I say Tommy, his whole group sold the right to market the treasure for $50 million. Now, that did not mean they sold the treasure. They sold the right to market it to a consortium in Southern California.
Are you talking about the Columbia America Discovery Group licensed it?
In effect.
In effect. Allowed it to be marketed, like to a Monex or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was three. It was to an investment consortium in Southern California. Gave Tommy $50 million. Gave Columbus American Discovery Group $50 million, and that gave them the right to sell the gold. And they distributed the gold among 3 big international coin dealers. And then they packaged things. They would package 2 small bars or 3 coins in a bar, and they put them in lots. And they sold them. And again, I don't know how much they raised totally. Now, the way I understand what happened, and I don't know much about this. I don't know any of the real details of it. 2 things. One is, once they had reached that 50 million figure, then the Columbus America Discovery Group would share in everything that was realized after that.
Not the 50 million? In other words, their 12 million wouldn't have been returned to them, leaving the balance for whatever?
Well, they would have gotten the second group, the second consortium in Southern California would have gotten their 50 million back plus another profit, and it wouldn't be anything above the 50. It'd be anything above whatever that extra bit was plus the 50. They would begin to share in that. Now, I would think that they sold everything, and I don't know. I think every once in a while people say, well, I just saw your gold on, as what belongs to me, your gold on TV, and it's still for sale. And I don't know if those are resales or if it's still the original. They haven't sold all of it. It's conceivable that they just haven't finished selling enough of it to realize that contract. Now,
well, if it was Monex, they leverage metals. They don't actually own anything. So if it was them...
I don't know what Monex is.
Well, nobody really does.
Is it money exchange or something? Or?
They are in the business of selling metals, but they sell metals contracts and they leverage metals through ETFs.
No, this would be historical collector's items. These bars and the coins were extremely valuable, not even for their numismatic value, but for their provenance. The story of where they came from and going to the bottom of the ocean and being brought up from there and all that stuff, that's what gave them their real value. But there was a group called Monaco Financial, who was the chief of the 3, who were largely involved in selling the gold to the public. But let me go back to the 50 million figure. At the time they made that deal, Columbus America was in debt $43 million.
From lawsuits?
It was fighting lawsuits. It was a variety. It was going back out because they announced they actually found the gold in '88. They announced it publicly in '89, and they went back out in the ocean in '90 and '91 and maybe '92. Doing scientific experiments and cleaning up stuff where they had, found the gold in that area. This is a 10-acre site. That's and it's dark, it's black, and it's hard to work in, and so it's very tedious work. But they went back out. That cost money. A lot of things cost money, and the lawsuit cost a bunch of money, and so they ended up as they had some loans. I think in 1989, when they announced they had found it, they were able to get a loan very quickly for $10 million. And then Christie's came into the picture, and Christie said, well, we'll just assume that loan for you. We'll pay back the bank, and we'll go forward and do, we'll market this, and we'll have a big auction and all of that stuff. And Tommy, as Tommy is and does, Tommy said, well, that may not be the best way to do it. Let's talk about this. And they talked for years about the best way to distribute the gold. And in the middle of that was all that Christie's and Sotheby's, when they were sued for fraud and collusion, and the guy who was the head of Christie's, who was the guy that Tommy was working with, was the whistleblower on his own organization. And a few people went to prison for that. So Christie's and Sotheby's were both upside down, too, while all this was going on. But they then there was the interest owed on that $10 million and other money that Christie's had loaned them. And as time went on, they borrowed some more money, and then the interest accumulated. And so, by 10 years later or so, it's up to $43 million. So when they sold it for 50, million. I have no idea what would have the other